Hello, conservatives of Texas. How you guys doing? Well, that's great. Hey, listen, I just wanted to jump on here on this lovely Friday evening to kind of showcase something that was brought to light here about a couple of weeks ago. I caught a little glimpse of the Jackie Robinson story. As I was watching it, I have to give Jackie Robinson, some props there. He did really well during that time period, breaking some of the issues, some of the situations, some of the barriers. So I can't imagine, the pressures he was feeling. But as I was watching this movie, I couldn't help but be reminded of something that occurred with Brooklyn, the Dodgers, whenever they moved to LA. And I kind of want to talk about it a little bit so we could really spearhead the elephant in the room when it comes to exploitation of people. The way I see it, at the end of the day, although Jackie Robinson did do a lot of great things, I'm not going to take anything from him. We all have to look at what the real reasoning behind it was. Brooklyn wanted to win championships. He was talented. They were really fighting for the opportunity to win a championship. I know that sounds pretty harsh, but it's the truth. And I can prove it to you with what happened just shortly after Brooklyn moved to Los Angeles. Let me read this to you. It's titled "The Ugly Violent Clearing of Chavez Ravine Before It Was Home to the Dodgers." It was written by Elena Shatkin and published on October 17th of 2018. All right. As the Dodgers gear up for Game 5 of the National League Championship Series, once again on their home turf, it's worth remembering that before Dodger Stadium was a legendary baseball venue, it was known as Chavez Ravine. The area was home to generations of families, most of them Mexican American. After the Dodgers made the deal to ditch Brooklyn, Los Angeles officials used eminent domain and other political maneuvering to wrest the land away from its owners. It was ugly. It was violent. It remains the sort of living history that Los Angeles residents do not like to remember. Chavez Ravine was named after Julian Chavez, a rancher who served as assistant mayor, city councilman, and eventually as one of LA County's first supervisors. In 1844, he started buying up land in what was known as the Stone Quarry Hills, an area with several separate ravines. Chavez died of a heart attack in 1879 at the age of 69. By the early 1900s, semi-rural communities had sprung up on the steep terrain, mostly on the ridges between the neighboring Sulphur and Cemetery ravines. What eventually came to be called Chavez Ravine encompassed about 315 acres and had three main neighborhoods: Palo Verde, La Loma, and Bishop. It had a grocery store, a church, and an elementary school. Many residents grew their own food and raised animals such as pigs, goats, and turkeys. Many Mexican American families, redlined and prevented from moving into other neighborhoods, established themselves in Chavez Ravine. Residents of the tight-knit community often left their doors unlocked. Outsiders often saw the neighborhood as a slum. City officials decided that Chavez Ravine was ripe for redevelopment, kicking off a decade-long battle over the land. They labeled it blighted and came up with a plan for a massive public housing project known as Elysian Park Heights, designed by architects Robert E. Alexander and Richard Neutra, 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 and funded in part by federal money. The project was supposed to include more than 1,000 units, 24 13-story buildings, and 162-story townhouses, as well as several new schools and playgrounds. In the early 1950s, the city began trying to convince Chavez Ravine homeowners to sell. Despite intense pressure, many residents resisted. Developers offered immediate cash payments to residents for the property. They offered remaining homeowners less money, so residents feared that if they held out, they wouldn't get a fair price. In other cases, officials used the power of eminent domain to acquire plots of land and forced residents out of their homes. When they did, they typically lowballed homeowners, offering them far less money than their land was worth. Chavez Ravine residents were also told that the land would be used for public housing, and those who were displaced could return to live in the housing projects. One way or another, by choice or by force, most residents of the three neighborhoods had left Chavez Ravine by 1953, when the Elysian Park Heights project fell apart. Norris Paulson, the new mayor of Los Angeles, opposed public housing as un-American, as did many business leaders who wanted the land for private development. The city bought back the land at a much lower price from the Federal Housing Authority, with the agreement that the city would use it for a public purpose. By 1957, the area had become a ghost town. Only 20 families, holdouts who had fought the city's offers to buy their land, were still living in Chavez Ravine. In June of 1958, voters approved by a slim 3% margin a referendum to trade 352 acres of land at Chavez Ravine to the owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers, Walter O'Malley. The following year, the city began clearing the land for the stadium. The following year, the city began clearing the land for the stadium. On Friday, May 9th, 1959, bulldozers and sheriff's deputies showed up to forcibly evict the last few families in Chavez Ravine. Residents of the area called it Black Friday. Sheriff's deputies kicked down the door of the Adechiga family's home. Movers hauled out the family's furniture. The residents were forcibly escorted out. Aurora Vargas, 36 years old, was carried, kicking and screaming, from her home at 1771 Malvina Avenue by 4 deputies. Minutes later, her home was bulldozed. Crews eventually knocked down the ridge separating the Sulphur and Cemetery ravines and filled them in, burying Palo Verde Elementary School in the process. The Adechiga family, led by 66-year-old matriarch Adriana Adechiga, camped amid the rubble for the next week before finally giving up. Crews broke ground for Dodger Stadium 4 months later. On September 17th, 1959, while it was being built, the Dodgers played games at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. The 56,000-seat Dodger Stadium opened on April 10th, 1962, on a site that thousands of people had once called home. It is currently the third oldest major league ballpark still in use, after Fenway Park and Wrigley Field. So, you can see here that just a few years later, after this occurred, these guys don't care about people. They don't care about skin color. They don't care about anyone's civil rights. They care about that money. Jackie Robinson did great things, okay? I'm not taking anything away from him. I'm not pointing the finger at Dodger fans today. This happened, years ago. Several decades ago. I'm not here to make anyone feel bad or whatever the case is. I'm here just to show that in history, when it comes to folks virtue signaling and saying that they're for people's race, color, creed, sexual orientation, at the end of the day, guys, it has nothing more, nothing less. It has everything to do with the mighty dollar. They recruited and got Jackie Robinson. It wasn't about skin color. It was about winning a championship, and they won that championship. It had nothing to do with skin color. It had everything to do with winning and money. As you can see, just a few years later, If they really were doing it for the right reasons, for convictions and not covetousness, we would have seen that they would have made the right decision in Los Angeles. But instead, we see them going in, partaking in something that was already put forth in motion. I know that the city had already been working on it, but the Brooklyn Dodgers should have did the right thing if they really cared about skin color and race. But as you can see in the article that I read, as you could hear, I'm sorry, it had everything to do with the mighty dollar. So anytime and every time you see folks virtue signaling companies and whatnot, holding the banner up for certain ideas and concepts, know that it's always going to be because they were put under some type of pressure. And it was always to push the agenda. Hey, guys, think y'all are great. Y'all are fantastic. God bless. Have a good night and a great weekend.